Hello, and welcome to the MTG Thoughtcast. I am your host, Joseph Rubino. Here on my right is the man, the myth, and the legend himself, Jared Bobier. How are you feeling, Jared?
I feel great. It's a great day. Ready to talk about some Magic.
Very nice, very nice. And on my left is the Oracle, John Kendall. Tell me how you're feeling.
Sounding like you're making us wrestle each other, but apart from that,
yes,
let's go.
WWE SmackDown Thoughtcast Steel Cage match. I'm here
in this corner, the Wizard of Audio himself, Jared.
I just play the most ridiculous hard bass song that ever has lived.
I'm in. Guys, we're looking good. We're sounding good today. We're all in the same general part of the world. I'm very excited for the uptick in quality here.
Yes.
But today, guys, before we get into it, just want to give a quick plug. If you're watching on YouTube, join our Discord. We have all the links down below. John and Jared and I are super active. We love hanging out. We're all learning together, and we're all creating some fun interactions. So if you want, jump into our Discord. Super free. We love hanging out. Today, speaking of our Discord, there's been some fun chatter that's been happening over the last couple of weeks where we've been talking about $25 deck lists. And is it possible? So that's today's topic is, are we able to build functioning and fun commander decks for $25 a piece?
As suggested by my wife, we've decided to call this little challenge the Micro-Brews.
The Micro-Brews in honor of our deck building forum on the Discord, the Brewery. This is the Micro-Brews.
More I feel maybe more related to our dedicated segment of Budget Brewery itself, right? Which is kind of going to be the overarching of this episode in general. This whole episode more or less will be Budget Brewery, but it's specifically about our Budget Brewery Micro-Brews.
Mm-hmm.
So all three of us have gone through and built a $25 deck list. Is this correct? Am I incorrect? Do we all have a deck list?
We've all got a deck list.
Sick. John, your physical props are amazing. I love that you're going to be flipping through it while we're talking.
I mean, I'm not going to be doing that, but I wanted to physically show I built but we'll get into my meme later.
I love it. Yeah, John, tell me about your deck, because I feel like you have a very interesting one that you put together.
You want me to start? No,
yeah.
That's no fun. All right.
Well, I need some time to drink my coffee, so you talk about your deck.
All right. Well, as one of the initial people who originally brought up this idea of the challenge, I'm a very atypical deck builder, something challenging, something more fun. I try to not lean too heavy into standard tropes when it comes to deck building, just in general. A lot of what I own already that isn't even part of budget, I like, specific sorcery tribal with my 5-color ultimatums and things of that nature. I build very atypical. So when told that, hey, build your entire deck within $25 budget, John's out here immediately thinking, okay, how can I do the stupidest meme thing possible? And then
that's our troll.
Our trolling. Well, so funny you say the troll, right? No one bitter of a troll than the absolute most dangerous gamer. I immediately fell back on my instant love of anything from the
unsets.
Right. And
what a direction to go.
Right. What a direction. This is not a discussion in any way, shape, or form of whether Unfinity did the wrong choice of having its stuff be legal or not. That's a completely different can of worms that I don't want to open. But the point is, we have the gamer, he's here now, and we've decided to build around it. So how this has been an extra challenge for me is that when you build a deck with extra outside components, like you do with attractions, those count. Those have to be counted in towards your budget. So I, for all intents and purposes, have built a 122 card deck. All with
I didn't think about that.
yeah. This is the legal attractions that you can play in any form of constructed. All 22 of them, each singleton, are all here, and those count towards your total. And kind of like a land situation as well. It's like you wouldn't think they add up, but I did actually have to order a couple of these special online, and they push sometimes like $1 each for the copy. So that couple extra bucks means that the main deck had to get slimmed to the best of my ability as well. And I think I did a pretty good job. I've decided in retrospective, because of how quickly Gamer is able to do attractions down into play, we've decided to name this deck the Cog-Champ. Leaning into the fast artifacts that you can get down into play, and then just the overall like effectiveness that Gamer has in combat and blocking and setting up efficient kills of that nature. So
very cool, very cool. We'll get into some of the strategies and difficulties that you came across in just a second here. But so that's the Cog-Champ. Jared, tell me about your $25 deck.
So my first thought was, okay, I have $25. So what is good with very
Mom gave me allowance.
Yes. I was like, what color actually just works with none of the expensive colors, parts of its color? Well, green, in my opinion, just works. You have cheap mana dorks. Like, I said the dumbest thing the other day when we were playing Magic in person, but I was like, the strongest thing in Magic is that you can do is play your cards. Such a stupid like
I made so much fun of you for saying that, but it's really true.
If you guys want us to make merch that says this, you should tell us, because it's probably one of the dumbest things I've ever said, but it's still it's like a valid real story.
I don't know. You've said some pretty dumb things, Jared.
That's fair. So anyway, I was like, okay, mono green, it just works. At worst, I just play big dumb creatures eventually. At best, it does something cool. So I decided to go for Gargos Vicious Watcher, just as kind of a throwback to when I started playing Magic. Giant Growth was like a thing that a bunch of people were playing in their decks for some reason. I think because we were just bad at Magic or something, and people were just buying pre-con like 60 card decks, and it was a thing. And combat tricks that are so small and like single target interaction like that don't super work in EDH, which is a little bit of a bummer, but this deck makes that good because of the fight mechanic that Gargos gives everything. I'll read Gargos so this deck makes actual sense. It's 3 green, so 6 CMC, vigilance, Hydra spells cost, 4 less to cast when you have the creature out. It's a legendary Hydra. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, Gargos fights up to 1 target creature that I don't control. So I can target Gargos himself with all of these giant growth-ish effects, and then he can just keep fighting people for like 1 or 2 mana, and he just keeps getting stronger and stronger. So that is it's a pretty strong mechanic. And if this was not a budget build, this deck would probably be really a pain in the butt to deal with. But
yes, it's very cool.
The budget keeps it in check. I was like, okay, single target. This becomes my commander is single target removal for creatures, which is great. And giant.
I mean, he sort of doubles if you play any like prey upon effects. He doubles them, where he does one individual fight and the other thing fights too.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Exactly.
Mono green control.
Yeah, it becomes like, so giant growth is 1 green to play. There's a bunch of effects in this deck that are like that, and it becomes pay 1 green, kill a creature, which is insane value. So Yeah, there's a subtle like Hydra theme in here. We'll talk about later why it's not fully hydrated out, but for now, that's the deck. It's pretty
Nice.
cool. I'm excited to play it.
I like it.
Some Hydras can get up there though in cost. That's probably why.
Yes. John, I realized you didn't give. Can you read through The Most Dangerous Gamer?
Oh yeah, you're right. I guess I didn't do that.
Boo.
Boo.
This is an audio show, John.
I know. I'm sorry.
Even though you should watch the video, it's really cool.
I put a lot of effort into them. Yeah,
It's unbelievably well edited.
The Most Dangerous Gamer is 2 black and green for a 2/2 legendary creature human gamer guest. The great.
It says guest.
What's up, gamers?
Human gamer guest.
This card is.
That's a great alt.
This card is
that card as well.
The showcases from Infinity were fantastic. This is the Galaxy foil specifically, actually.
Ooh.
Human gamer guest friend. He starts as a 2/2 with Death Touch. He naturally always has Death Touch because gamers are toxic. When the Most Dangerous Gamer enters the battlefield or attacks, you open an attraction. When you open an attraction, you put a +1/+1 counter on the Most Dangerous Gamer. And then the most useless part of him, because there's only one attraction that claims a prize that's legal to play. Whenever you claim the prize of an attraction, destroy target permanent. So just in general, playing it in legal Commander, you can only ever do that once. Because there's only one attraction. But
Gotcha.
so you basically just ignore that bottom part there. He basically just says 2/2, Death Touch, opens or enters or attacks, open an attraction, put a counter on him. That's it.
Very
super
nice.
fun.
Maybe get somebody once with that blow up a thing, but
Yes.
very, very unlikely to happen.
If you really need removal one time, you can do it.
Yeah.
Right. Guys, I had quite the journey in building mine because I had a whole deck list together until last night when I was playtesting it and realized that it wasn't as good as I had hoped that it was going to be.
Oh,
So
no.
let me take you on that journey real quick.
Yes, please.
So the first thing that I decided that I wanted to do, speaking of toxic gamers, is play combos. I wanted to really push that. Can we do a proper combo win for $25? And the answer is kind of. So I started off playing Rocco Street Caterer. No, Rocco Cabaretti Caterer. The other one is Rocco Street Chef. And I can read that real quick. So Rocco Cabaretti Caterer is X red, green, white for a legendary creature elf druid. When Rocco enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle. And he has a 3/1. So it's sort of Green Sun Zenith on a creature. So I started there and built out a pretty cool combo deck, which I'll have the link to that somewhere as well. But as I was playing through it last night, I could get some of the combos going, but never all at the same time. So I either could get to the Devoted Druid infinite mana combo and then just sit there and just have infinite mana and do nothing with it. Or I had all of the other pieces to make infinite creatures, like with Scurry Oak and Ivy Lane Denizen, to make infinite squirrels and an infinitely big Scurry Oak. But I didn't have the mana to get up to it. So it was tough to be able to make the deck actually flow and work. So I don't know if it would have actually won any games. So I went on a tirade last night and I said, if I can't do one toxic thing, we're going to do Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief.
Oh,
Mutate
no.
deck. So Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief is a green and a blue, so 2 mana for a 2/1 with flying. It's a legendary creature, Fairy Rogue. And it says, whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief, you may copy that spell, and that copy targets Ivy. So what we're playing in this deck is it's like 29 or 30 creatures, which is kind of crazy. But we're playing all of the mutate creatures from Ikoria.
You
So the
just
whole-
built the absolute antithesis of the deck I built, right?
Yes. So I'm putting together, I want to play a creature, I want to play Ivy, I want to mutate something on that first creature. Because I've cast a spell that targets a creature, we make a mutate copy that also goes onto Ivy. So we're building up our team. Also, there's some weird stuff where if you can change Ivy's name via mutate, so if you mutate something like a Dreamtail Heron over Ivy, it becomes a non-legendary Dreamtail Heron that has Ivy's ability. So if you can clone the mutated Ivy where Ivy is where you've mutated over Ivy, you can make more copies of Ivy.
Dude.
So we're playing things like, we can get into the deck lists in a second here, but the goal is play Ivy, change her name, and then do really dumb mutate stuff and copies and everything. So it's make some weird creatures in Simic. So I built this at like 2 a.m. last night, and I really like it. So we've just leaned full into it.
Dang.
John, tell me, what was the hardest part of putting a $25 deck together? Because there's a lot of hardships that are involved in that. A lot of sad cuts that you have to make.
You lose a lot of like mainstay stapley pieces, yeah. But apart from the other that I mentioned, like I had already briefly touched on that when you're doing a deck that has extra components like what mine has, right? You're already that cuts the amount of deck filler that you can use even greater, right? As I mentioned, 22 legal to play attractions, all varying in price from about 8 cents to 86 cents. So a whole deck like this cuts my main deck budget like down almost a whole like $2.50 to $3-ish, depending on what versions you would do.
Holy
So
crap.
yeah,
You did this challenge on like absolutely extreme hard mode.
You did your own hard mode.
So it's kind of a weird double edge about it, though. It's like, yeah, my attractions add up to almost an extra $2-ish or so, but the other main components that fill out the deck that help open attractions faster, just like what Gamer does, all of those, since they also come from Unfinity, they're also dirt cheap as well. So, like, the main components that would normally go into this deck already are already floating incredibly low on price, you know? You can currently right now, and I just double checked myself on this just to make sure, any of the legal to play cards from Unfinity, there is not a single one, and even if you go into like their variants and foils and things like that, there is like 4 cards total that you would need to purchase from the set that would be over $3 or $4, give or take. Nothing from Unfinity is expensive. So all the main stuff that would normally go into this deck already is already considered budget. So it's like it balanced out the hard mode-ish of it, kind of. Is like, yeah, I've got an extra 22 cards to budget in, but everything that was going to go in this deck already is already stupid dirt cheap.
Yeah, I experienced that as well with the mutate cards, because most of them are really bad, and you wouldn't play them anywhere else.
On their own, yeah.
Having like a hyper-specific theme, like attractions or mutate, was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, big creatures go roar.
Big creatures go brrr.
Yeah. For my build specifically, the hardest kind of cards to actually like fit in and decide which ones needed to be cut or whatever was the kind of the kind of background components that cared about his +1/+1 counters synergy. This build actually kind of originally started out more towards like Voltron-y with like equipment, which there are still some of those in here, but I have since kind of dropped that back a smidge. So when you go to lean heavier into the adding 1/1 counters onto him, you know, you can't just slap in hardened scales in here, you know, as much as I want to.
That would take up a fifth of the deck budget for one card, and you just can't do that.
We'll talk about like in the upgrades later, but yeah, there are some 1/1 counter synergy stuff that just like, oh, these push $1.25 each, you know, you can't even do that. So Same with some certain equipments, you know. Everyone loves Sword of Fire and Ice, but you just can't do that in a $25 budget. Enchantment or dinkier stuff, you know, like just not being able to play Lightning Greaves is very hard, right? A deck like this really needs its commander, and equipment and enchantments normally that provide that sort of protection that you see across all kinds of standard builds, those add up incredibly fast, you know? You got to cut your losses where they are. It's like, do I slap in the Lightning Greaves and have nothing else that helps benefit the commander, you know? How much do you rely on that? And it's harder than it appears to not just immediately throw all the staples in there.
Yeah. Jared, thoughts?
Yeah, so that was definitely like some of the motivational thinking behind why I went for green. Because I wanted to be able to still ramp and still like have cards to play, and because that was my biggest fear. I was like, I only run green right now in, well, I have 2 decks that run green, but it's part green, part other things. Mm-hmm. And I would say, as far as colors that I like playing, green is probably my least favorite to play, because it tends to be so linear that like you literally just make a bunch of mana and then you play something big and then it gets removed and then you lose the game. Like that's typically how green goes. But yeah, so that was part of the motivation here. Was this is assuming that, so we're building these kind of like as decks that will be played against each other also. That's definitely in the works here. But so knowing that, I'm like, okay, interaction is going to be lower, so mono green is not going to be such a drawback for me here. So I can get around like missing a bunch of staple cards that I would want to play in a mono green deck, just because I'm going to have a lot of consistency and playability with my deck by generating mana with small creatures and getting to draw cards in ways like that as well. And also going back to what I said about giant growth kind of tactics not being playable in EDH typically, like at all. Like if you're doing that in EDH, it's probably bad unless it's honestly this commander. This is the only commander I could possibly think of that would utilize that well. Minx Kimbu is maybe the only other one. You can grow your hamster and then throw it at someone's face. But there's already better ways to do that if you're playing Minx Kimbu. So anyway,
I'm looking forward then to tell you about the giant growth effect that I have in my deck that is incredible with Gamer, but I'll tell you about it later.
Oh God.
Can't wait. So yeah, giant growth-ish effects are so cheap because no one is playing them. And so that was kind of a lot of the motivation in what I'm doing here with this deck. So that was allowed me to cut the budget quite significantly to leave room. I think I do have a Swiftfoot Boots in here just because the way this deck is going to play, it's going to be very commander oriented, and it's already a 6 CMC commander. I'm not trying to have to like recast this 4 times. That'll get too expensive.
I agree with you.
Right. Thankfully, in green, like there's game-ending cards that are less than $1. Like Andre's Forerunners is a game-ending card if I can just have enough creatures on the field. There are some staples that are actually really cheap, like Reclamation Sage is just a great green creature. Let's see here. Overrun is another thing that is a game ender, and I get to run that because it's literally 40 cents for like a near mint staple. Like that's crazy. But yeah, it's just this whole deck very much leans into a tactic that does not get used in Commander very much, and because of that, it creates a lot of headroom for the budget to use. So yeah, I think it'll play really well. I actually can't wait to get in and test these and see what happens there. But
Yes.
Hopefully that answered the question. I felt like I was rambling a little bit. But.
No, it was great. It's funny. I realized as you were talking that the three of us built green of some type. John, you built green plus black. I built green plus blues. I think we all came to the same sort of conclusion where if you want to play EDH at the speed that we like playing it, you have to ramp. Like you have to include ramp as a part of your deck.
Yes.
And without being able to really play Soul Ring, because that's like a 250 card, like that's a tenth of your budget for like, you just can't really do that in when you need to put 100 cards in and have a budget of under $25. Having like your $2 to $3 cards become very, very slim. So being able to play Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, and Finhorn Elves in the deck as the ramp package. Also, ramping growth is only like a quarter. So
yes.
I was able to fit that in. Like this felt the closest to being able to play what I would call like regular EDH as compared to the Micro-Brewery. So I found it hard, and I love that you were talking about like Endray's Forerunners and Overrun, because I found it really hard to play or to find win conditions at this price. I feel like most of the cards that you would play in a regular EDH deck that are under $1 are either enablers or very specifically themed pieces that you would throw in. But most cards that can actually close out a game are going to be $1 plus. Yes. So I had a lot of trouble finding ways to win. So I think that's what really drew me to Ivy, was I can play all of these very thematic creatures as my win conditions, like Auspicious Sterix. Jared, put you on the spot. What does Auspicious Sterix do? Don't look it up. No, don't look it up.
I've literally got no clue, dude.
This is the point. Like,
I've never heard of this card in my life.
It's hyper specific. It's 4 and a green for a 6/6 elk beast that when it mutates on, you exile cards from the top of your library, and so you exile X permanent cards, where X is the number of times this creature has mutated. Put those permanents onto the battlefield.
Wow.
So when you mutate onto Ivy, and then you keep mutating, you flip until you find a permanent. And then when you mutate again, you flip until you find 2 permanents. And if you've copied Ivy, now you have 2 of those going at the same time, and they're both mutating and entering. Like it's the win conditions are the creatures. It's pretty close to Battlecruiser Magic, except all of the creatures are going to be best.
Thanks for asking me if I knew the card.
Well, I know that you're the Oracle. I know that you know it. I got to put Jared on the spot.
I am not an Oracle. I don't know anything.
Yes.
I don't know anything. I've been playing this game.
We both are here for the vibes, and John is here for the text. Also, the actual win con of the deck, I would love to talk about.
Go for it.
Where is it?
This can segue us right way into talking about our all-stars of the deck, because I've got a little list as well.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, I can start talking about my all-stars. Venerated Rot Priest is a 2 1/4. So this is one of the more expensive cards in the deck. But it says whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter.
Ooh.
For 1 mana, it's a 1/2 Phyrexian Druid. So, and that's not whenever you cast a spell that targets. It's whenever a creature becomes the target. So Ivy's copies give you an additional trigger of Venerated Rot Priest. So it's also not a human. The weird thing with Mutate is that Mutate says mutate onto a non-human.
Right.
So this is sort of non-human tribal. But like, I was really sitting with, do I want to put a card that costs more than $2 in the deck? And I feel like the answer is just assuredly yes, because it is going to accidentally win the game by just firing off with Ivy's stuff. So the whole game plan for Ivy is to play things like, also my budget brewery card from maybe it was last week was Gilded Goose. And Gilded Goose is an all-star in this deck. Like, it's a mana rock when you want it to be, or it's a mana creature when you want it to be, but it also is an 0/2 with flying. for whenever you want to start mutating on the stuff. So it naturally has evasion, even though it has 0 power. So later in the game, you can just start throwing stuff on it.
Right, for the same reasons Birds of Paradise is so good, but
exactly. Yes, but you can't put a $13 card in a $25 deck.
$13 mana dork in a $25.
Yes, I think that I'm still going to die on the hill of Gilded Goose. I think more people should be playing Gilded Goose if you're playing green and another color anyway. It's going to be Birds of Paradise most of the time. So the win con there. Besides that, it's just playing big mutate creatures onto either like Glade Cover Scout. I couldn't fit actual Slippery Boggles into the deck because it's like $1.50.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Which is just a 1-mana 1/1 with Hexproof. But Glade Cover Scout does that as well. It's an Elf Scout with Hexproof for 1/1. So what?
Did you get Invisible Stalker in the deck?
No, because it's a human.
Oh, it's a human. Oh, that's unfortunate.
So Invisible Stalker's not there. I did have. I didn't want to go super hard into the unblockable theme.
Slither Blade
it probably is worth it. Maybe if I spent a little more time with this, I might. I haven't done a ton of playtesting with it, but in the bit that I did, I didn't feel like it was super necessary to have unblockable. Like flying does most of what unblockable does anyway. Or like you're usually with mutating onto things, you're giving it trample or you're giving it, some type of evasive. Yeah, and it just becomes redundant if you're putting that on a creature that's already unblockable. Like it just feels kind of bad. Like you're missing out on half of the fun of the mutate cards if you're just doing that onto unblockable things. Okay. And also like I feel like if you're doing a $25 deck, it's about the fun of it for me. So like I've had a copy of Ivy sitting around for a while. So this has been a way to like, do I like playing this deck? Do people like playing against it? I don't have to like go all out on it and, build a more expensive version of it just to find out that I don't like playing it. So being able to just throw $25 at it and go, okay, let's see what happens. And then, so we would upgrade pretty heavily, so we have some little creatures like the Gilded Goose, like the also even just like Elvish Mystic Llanowar Elves, like those become really good to mutate onto later because your ramp creatures become less of dead draws when you're trying to mutate onto them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing.
There's quite a few instances in the deck as well that are just single mana draw a card. Like if you can target something, your 1-mana cantrips of drawing a card become 1-mana draw 2 cards, and that is approaching busted.
Yeah, that's crazy.
We've got like the really cool one was a sorcery. Enter the Unknown is a sorcery that is just cost a green. Target creature you control explores. So you reveal the top card of your library, put it into your hand if it's a land, otherwise put a counter on the creature and then put the card back on top or back into the graveyard. So you can you surveil if you don't draw a land off of it. But then it says you may play an additional land this turn. So if you just doing that once is fine. That's most of an explore. But if you get to copy that onto Ivy, then you've paid 1 green mana to double explore. Like it's the best ramp that I've ever played.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So there's really cool, weird things. I get to play Wilson Refined Grizzly in the deck, which is just one of my favorite cards because it's a 2-mana 2/2 that can't be countered, has Vigilance, Reach, Trample, and Ward 2. Just for a silly little bear.
That's wild. Also, such an awesome. I love that card. That exists.
Yes, yeah. So I listen to the EDH Rec podcast a lot, and they constantly talk about how good the Baldur's Gate set was, that everybody just missed it. Like, it genuinely, as a Commander player, is one of the best sets that's been released for us, but it got so swept under the rug, and everybody misses how good all of the cards in this set are. I'm finding, like, most of my decks are slowly approaching, like, I'm putting more and more Baldur's Gate cards in them. We're just a couple of years behind on it now.
I mean, what you mean is like everybody talking about more than just Displacer Kitten. right? There is
100%.
There is great stuff in there. I'm in the same boat as you. I've been leaning into putting backgrounds into a lot of my commanders.
Backgrounds are so good.
The backgrounds are sweet, honestly. Being able to modify what your commander can do for just having an enchantment in your deck is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very neat stuff.
I love it. That's like some of my all-stars. The last thing that I'll say is I had a lot of fun trying to find budget land options. The ones that I started a thread about this in the brewery on Discord, but there's some pretty good land options that I found that I'm not playing in my non-budget decks that I probably should be, like the Snarl lands from what set was that from, John? The Snarl lands.
The originally not called Snarls. The originals came from Shadows over Innistrad, and then all of them were called Snarls in Strixhaven.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like Vine Glimmer Snarl is the one that I'm playing.
Yeah, and I think originally when they came out, they were kind of referred to as like reveal lands. I think people called them at first because the whole you have to show a basic. Yeah. But they didn't have a unified name when they first came out. Only Strixhaven decided to call its cycle of 5 Snarls. But like the ones from Shadows over Innistrad block with stuff like Choke Estuary and Fortified Village, but I could be wrong about that.
Sure. It was just cool. I found like there's it's a full cycle of all 10 lands, so you can play any of them that you want in your decks, and they're all under 50 cents. So it felt like this is one of the few lands that you could play in a deck like this that comes in untapped some of the times. So it's the way the Snarls work is as they enter the battlefield, you may reveal one or either of the basic lands that it taps for. So like this one taps for a green or a blue, and you can reveal either a forest or an island card. If you do, it enters untapped. If you don't, it enters tapped. So like if you're holding Vine Glimmer Snarl and a forest, turn 1, you've got an untapped dual land. So I really like those.
Yeah. So for staple cards, this is not a Hydra, but it's just a really good card in green if you are playing a bunch of big stuff and you need a cost reducer. The original Goreclaw is great.
Yes.
He just makes all of my creatures cost 2 less. So that means all of my Hydras are going to get just 2 more +1/+1 counters, which is awesome. So that card is really nice. And also the next section of its effect, whenever Goreclaw, Terror of Calcesima attacks, each creature you control of power 4 or greater gets +1/+1 and trample. So any big creatures I have that don't already have trample are just going to get it. And when you send like 5 like 10/10 Hydras across in combat and they all have trample, that's really scary. Trample sometimes reads as unblockable because people will they'll just stop blocking your stuff because it's not worth it to kill their own things and then still take a bunch of damage on top. So that's a great card in this deck. I've got some enchantments over here. Let me look at that. So Sight of the Scale Lords, it's 4 and a green for 5 CMC. And it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, creatures you control with toughness 4 or greater get +2/+2 and vigilance until end of turn. So I can move to combat, trigger Sight of the Scale Lords, play Giant Growth or something else, and then all of a sudden it's like +5 to Gargos, and then I fight something. And
yeah, that's huge.
It's big. It's hard to deal with. We have another card over here. It says it's Wild Defiance. It's 2 and a green. It's an enchantment. Whenever a creature you control becomes the target of an instant or sorcery spell, that creature gets +3/+3. So that synergizes perfectly with the commander. So just a bunch of static effects that will continue to happen every time I buff my commander up. That will also increase the amount of power and toughness that it gets, which will make his fight mechanic even stronger every single time I do it. So those
You might be playing this as well because I am, but are you playing Season of Growth in the deck?
Season of Growth.
It's an enchantment.
Yep, I am.
Yeah.
Whenever so it's 1 and a green. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1, which is good. And whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, draw a card. So it basically refills your hand. It turns all of my tiny buff effects into cantrips, which makes them actually insane. Like those go from being like but good in this deck to just good overall. And this card is only 2 mana to play, which is absolutely insane. Let me see, as far as I think that's for staples. I think those are like the actual effects that like I'll be using a lot. I get to run Green Sun's Twilight in here, which is really sick because it's only 80 cents.
I've been loving Green Sun's Twilight. I've put that into a few of my other decks as well. It has always paid off very well.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was stoked to find an effect like this because on my upgrade list, I have the more expensive ones like Finale of Devastation and stuff like that. But like, I was really, really happy to find an effect like this that I think Green does so well, and they're kind of known for these kind of big X spells that do crazy creature stuff. I can read this off. So it's X green. Reveal top X cards +1 of your library. Choose a creature card and or a land from among them. Put those cards into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. If X is 5 or more, instead put the chosen cards onto the battlefield. And it's really easy to get X above 5 because you're in green, so you're ramping a lot. So I'm also getting to run a one of the battles. I'm going to run Invasion of Zendikar. So that's a 3 and a green battle. When Invasion of Zendikar enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 basic lands and put them on the battlefield tapped. Cheap ramp.
It's explosive vegetation. It's exactly explosive vegetation.
Yes. So I'm excited to test that battle out, and then I can flip it over into a mana dork that's a 4/4 with vigilance and haste. So that's just good. Playing in budget makes me consider options I probably wouldn't consider otherwise, and I think that was one of the most fun parts of this whole deck building experience. As you guys can attest, I think Joseph and you and I had the hardest time getting into.
It was tough.
We are very much like, we're not spikes, but we're optimal brewers, I would say. We try to optimize as much as possible, which is pretty much the opposite of a budget. We try to like find the cheapest version that is good, but sometimes it's just, you can't find the cheap. There's just not a cheap version of it. So it made me totally just flip the way I think about cards and what I'm looking for. I don't know how I almost missed this card, but Mana Gorger Hydra is in this deck because it's only 70 cents as a near mint. Like, this is so affordable. Mana Gorger Hydra is insane. If you guys have ever had to play against it, we have a guy that frequently plays in our pod that plays a Minsk and Boo deck. It's actually what I was really referring to earlier. He also runs Mana Gorger Hydra in that deck, and it is absolutely terrifying. Every time this hits the board, it becomes a problem in one cycle of the table. It's crazy. Yeah.
Give me tell me what Mana Gorger Hydra does real quick.
So 2 and a green for a creature Hydra with trample. And whenever a player casts a spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Mana Gorger Hydra. So it starts as a 1/1, but it's only a 3 CMC card. So if you're playing this, you might, if it's like beyond turn 3 or 4, you might even have another spell to follow up with. So it's immediately a 2/2. You pass the turn. It's going to just, like, if people play 2 spells a turn, which is pretty normal, that's on the conservative end of how many spells people are going to be playing. This card will grow in power 6/6 by the time it makes it back to you. And it, like, say you played a spell after you played this card and everyone else played a spell. Now you have an 8/8 for 3 mana, and it's got trample, and it's just going to become more and more of a problem. So honestly, this card is actually really great deflection for my commander, because people hate Mana Gorger Hydra. It's terrifying. It's a strong card, but it's not what makes my deck function. So
it's all kinds of silly good, even in stuff that isn't Hydras, but yours just happens to also have it be synergistic with the fact that it is a Hydra, and that's what Gargos cares about. Because you can target other Hydras other than just Gargos. All he says is that when a Hydra becomes the target of the spell, Gargos fights the thing.
Exactly.
So you can get the Hydra stupid big. You could get that one stupid big anyway with like 1/1 counters and pumping it effect. And like, yeah, you're not pumping Gargos at that point, but just in a pinch, if you need it to be, you can, someone's about to go Doomblade that Hydra is I'll target it with this Temio safekeeping. Also, Gargos kills your commander.
Exactly.
It's ridiculous.
Mana Gorger Hydra is a problem. It does kind of work. The way I kind of think about cards like this too is they are such a removal target that he is more Mana Gorger Hydra is almost more like I have to remove this than my commander would be to some people. And I would prefer my commander to stick around, even though it's probably not going to ever get as large as the Mana Gorger, just because he's I have literally 22 instants in here, and that's mostly like giant growth effects. So if I lose my commander, those spells become pretty useless to me. So I need my commander out to do stuff. And Mana Gorger Hydra, if it's on the battlefield and if it's huge, it's a huge bonus. But if people are removing that instead of my commander, I'm looking at that as like sort of protection for my commander in a way. That is all the creatures I want to talk about. So pretty cool.
Love it.
You want me to talk about any upgrades or anything?
We'll get to that in a second. But John needs to give the highlights of the most dangerous gamer.
Toxic gaming. Let's go. So like, as difference compared to the two of you, because like I had mentioned, I had a slightly slimmer budget options that I had to work with because of the added attractions. But those are just all extra effects that I get to just play in my deck regardless. Sometimes they trigger, sometimes they don't. Attractions are very hit or miss if they actually go, whatever. But like I had mentioned, most all the other main components that would go into a deck like this with playing attractions, they're on budget anyway. So the amount of like synergistic top end cards that I could do. Also, attractions just as a whole, like what the gamer can put down, it's kind of unique. You don't really get a lot of cards that let you put essentially zero casting cost non-token artifacts. Like there are artifacts, there are cards that care about you putting like normal artifacts into play, but most of the time you do a lot of artifacts all at once, you're doing tokens, you're doing token artifacts. So a deck like this that can put non-token art, because like the attractions end up being permanents that go into place, so they are targetable, they are copyable, they are destroyable. So so for example, something lower end, Sareth's Steel Seeker. It's a 1 in a green for a 1/2 human artificer scout. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it, put it into your hand. And if you don't put that card into your hand, you may put it into your graveyard. So it kind of does explore. Anytime an artifact enters, it explores. That triggers off of attractions. Attractions are artifacts.
Wow.
Yeah. So every attraction that opens up does a soft explore kind of thing. The same being artifacts in play as well, then any kind of cards that cares about the amount of artifacts you have or having an artifact enter the battlefield to some capacity, we can try to fit most of those in here. From the original equipment package, I kept cranial plating just because that's kind of a no-brainer thing. Cranial plating, in my opinion, would probably be is one of the best equipments, like just ever, flat.
Would you mind reading off cranial plating real quick?
Yeah, cranial plating offhand is 2 mana, I believe. I'm gonna find it real. 2 mana equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 for each artifact you control, which does count itself at minimum. Equips a creature for 1, and then for double black can attach itself to a target creature. It's one of the few equipment in the game that naturally has on it the ability to equip to something else at instant speed. It's incredibly powerful, but in any form of an artifact deck, this thing can get kind of out of hand. So
if you're playing artifacts and you're in black, you should just be playing cranial plating. Like it's almost an auto include.
It is, yeah. For the same reason that I have tons of artifacts to make cranial plating work, would probably be one of my strongest cards in the deck, apart from Gamer himself, is Armix Filigree Thrasher. Armix is 2 and a black for a legendary artifact creature golem. He's a 3/2. Whenever he attacks, you may discard a card. Whenever you do, target creature defending player controls gets -X/-X until end of turn, where X is the number of artifacts you control plus the number of artifact cards in your graveyard. This is just repeated removal. At the cost of 1 card in your hand, Armix goes in for the attack, and you just instantly give something -X equal to your attractions. Which, if you're attacking with Gamer at the same time, you can delay those triggers that, like, Gamer opens a new attraction first, then Armix sees the new attraction and just kills something. And -X will pass stuff like Indestructible as well. Very strong, very strong. Art attractions in play can also be tapped, just like any other artifacts you can. So not in the right colors for Urza, but we are in the artifact colors we need for Necron Overlord and Lodestone Mirror. I'll start with Lodestone Mirror because it's the easier of the two. Lodestone, I believe, is 4 mana. I don't have these pulled up. That's why
I'll look it up for you.
I'm physically searching them. Lodestone, I have it right here. Lodestone Mirror is a 4 mana 2/2 artifact creature mirror. It naturally comes with trample and activated ability of tap an untapped artifact you control to give Lodestone Mirror +1/+1 until end of turn. You can really catch people off guard sometimes with that ability, because artifacts that just normally never become tapped, like equipment, they just boost. They boost him out of nowhere. Swing in.
I know all about tapping equipment for mana.
Yeah,
you do.
Here's my dinky little 2/2. I'll tap the cranial plating he's wearing. Now he's bigger. In this deck specifically, you can tap the attractions, because attractions don't do anything else other than roll in your main phase and trigger their ability. It's for the same reason Necron Overlord is in here as well. Necron Overlord is 2 and double black for a Necron. And it has activated ability of X and tap X untapped artifacts you control. I believe it's target opponent. It might be each.
Target opponent.
Target opponent, yeah. So it's a little slower than doing the Lodestone Mirror, but if you're just like on a turn, have nothing better going on than just attacking and making people deal damage, you just funnel all your mana in.
10 damage to face.
Yep, 10 to face. Oops, you're dead. You know?
It's a bummer that you have to pay X in addition to tapping him.
True, yeah.
But still, like, that is unbelievably powerful.
It can be very powerful. My other standouts in the deck revolve around the idea of Gamer himself having Death Touch. Like you had mentioned, Jared, that targeted removal is kind of scarce, or like the really, really good ones anyway. You know, you're kind of budget locked with those. Yes. And in a similar mindset to like how you have Gargos act as removal with fighting, Gamer, and just in an extent, any kind of creature that has Death Touch is incredibly strong with those one-sided fight effects. The ones that say that your creature deals damage equal to its power to something else. Death Touch is a factored into that characteristic because it's the creature that assigns the damage, not the spell. So something incredibly low to the ground like Nature's Way. All it says is a creature of yours gains vigilance and trample until end of turn. It deals damage equal to its power to something else. With something like Dangerous Gamer or anything else that's in the deck that has Death Touch, like Teething Wormlet, that can have Death Touch as well.
Yes.
Any of those, if you just assign that damage power to power, 9 times out of 10 you can kill something you can kill an opponent's creature without ever having yours being fought back.
That's so sick.
One of the silliest I have in this deck is Spinning Wheel Kick from Neon Dynasty.
Dude, I love that card.
It's so good. It's a little rough on the casting cost, but if you can get it high enough,
oh my god,
it could be a one-sided board wipe. One-sided board wipe with a Death Touch creature. 2 damage here and 2 damage here and 2 damage there.
Yep.
Yes. Mind you, we're still talking about budget. Like, this whole episode has kind of been one big long budget brewery segment. Like,
as for the actual attractions themselves, before the attractions though, what I leaned into as well with this deck as well, and it's actually where I can't figure out why. One of my most expensive cards in the deck, the one I had the biggest budget for, is those kinds of effects that most of them are instant speed. I think one is an enchantment. I don't know if I played that one, but the instant speed effects that you target a creature either of yours or somebody else's, and it gains the ability of when it dies, it comes back into play, usually tapped to some capacity. The one offhand for some reason of mine that was really expensive is Feign Death from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. It's a single black mana to give a creature, I believe it's 1/0, and when that creature dies this turn, return it to the battlefield tapped under your control with a +1/+1 counter. They're not necessarily like counter spells per se, but if my commander, as an example, if it's swinging in and something bigger than it blocks, I can still trade up with that creature because of the Death Touch. But mine would be able to come back into play after being targeted with it gains 2/0 and returns to play tapped when it dies this turn, you know?
That's awesome.
And it works super well with Dangerous Gamer because even though he would die in that trade interaction, because he's re-entering the battlefield, he's going to open a new attraction. So he will continue to compile up those attractions. You got to restart the counters at that point, but he has killed something on the way out and has reopened a new attraction as he came back into play.
That's so nice synergy right there.
Yeah. But yeah, it's weird that Feign Death is of all the stuff that's in here is the most expensive card in the build. As for the attractions themselves, probably the best. Okay, so probably other than Step Right Up, which is just a sorcery for 3 that says just open to attractions. That's the cleanest, easiest one that opens multiple attractions in the deck. A lot of my other permanent cards just either do one at a time. There's Quick Fixer that opens up an attraction on combat damage, but most all the other ones are just one-shot effects of enter the battlefield, open an attraction. Cast this sorcery, open an attraction. So you usually just get one at a time. The other synergistic card that I feel like it works extremely well to be able to multiple, like when you open all of these attractions, you definitely want to be hitting them every turn. Like just putting artifact into play that doesn't do anything inherently on its own is just not good enough. You want to constantly be able to hit these attractions every time they go off. So the only one that I could include in here that helps get that ball rolling is called Night Shift of the Living Dead. It is.
What is this?
Welcome to
stupid. It's so stupid.
Right. Welcome to playing Silver Border sets where the silliest cards come to fruition. Night Shift of the Living Dead. It is a 4-mana enchantment. It's 3 and a black. After you roll a die, you may pay 1 life, and if you do, increase or decrease the result by 1. You can only do this once each turn. Extremely good in a deck like this because no matter how many attractions you have, you only roll 1d6, and whatever number you land on, all the attractions that match that number hit. So all it takes is the 1 trigger on this to adjust your attraction roll to exactly what you need, which in a deck like this, you're aiming for 6 all the time. 6 is always illuminated on every attraction. So if you can if you can consistently roll a 6, you are visiting all your attractions every turn. And
so
it's
that
also
gives you a 1 in 3 chance to hit a 6 instead.
pretty much, yeah. It
Wow.
also
Yeah,
said
'cause if you roll a 1, can you? I guess you wouldn't be able to subtract the total to 6, right? You'd subtract it to
No.
1.
yeah. If you roll
But
a
it-
1,
It allows
if you-
his 5 to become a 6.
correct.
So
yeah.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
isn't
3.
there? If you roll a 1, nothing happens on any
On
of them,
attractions, yep. No, nothing happens on
right?
one. Correct.
So what that means is your 5s turn into 6s, and your 1s, which would be dead rolls, turn into 2s.
correct.
That's killer. That's so good. So much good choice there.
It's the best attraction synergy in the deck. It also just has an advantage of whenever you roll a 6, you make a 2/2 black zombie employee creature token, but that's less relevant. The
That's
more
so
relevant,
funny.
the more
So
relevant.
awesome.
Right. Oh, the tokens that this deck can make is crazy silly. Night Shift of the Living Dead makes zombie employees. I have the Clown Extruder for an
Too real,
artifact.
dude.
The Clown Extruder makes 1/1 clown robots, which are also artifacts, actually, by the way.
Mhm.
So they synergize with the cranial plating. And Balloon Stand, I think it's called. Balloon Stand makes 1/1 red flying balloon tokens.
That's amazing.
It's
So
so
funny.
silly. I actually made a specific list as well for the attractions of which ones are very good. It's mostly just the rare ones. I mean,
Yeah.
some of attractions are kind of basically just artifact permanent versions of continual spells, you know? Like, it's kind of boring, but one of the best ones is just Information Booth. Trigger it, draw a card. Just, that's it. Just card advantage is super good. There's all kinds of other effects that float in and amongst all the other attractions, giving creatures 2/0, give a creature flying, give a creature that it has to be blocked this turn. That's super useful with Gamer. Probably, not even probably close. The best one in the deck is called Hall of Mirrors. It is an attraction that triggers and says, when you visit it, I'll get the specific wording real quick. Choose a target creature you control, and each other creature you control becomes a copy of that creature until end of turn, except it isn't legendary if the chosen creature is legendary.
You just made dangerous gamers.
Yep. You turn all those clown robots into dangerous gamers.
Oh.
You turn all the other 1/1 counter things into dangerous gamers, which they then will have that at minimum. They'll have that attack, open an attraction, put a +1/+1 counter on itself.
Dude,
Ridiculous.
Crazy silly. Absolutely crazy
love it.
silly.
I want to
Um,
see that happen. That's what I want to see.
Yes. We
I got
need
to
do the
I got to
first
do that. I got to do
gameplay. Go ahead.
I got to do that once in doing a playtest thing. I got get down the Hall of Mirrors and turn. I only had one other creature at the time, but still having 2 of the same commander in play for a turn was incredibly silly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sick.
Any
Any other like
Yeah,
staples
just-
or anything?
the 2 more attractions real quick I wanted to bring up real fast. Swinging Ship is very fun as well. It is another big synergy piece that works with Gamer itself. Swinging Ship, when it triggers its visit, it gives you an extra combat step after the first combat one. It says when you visit it after combat phase, there's a additional combat step. Hold on, let me read it correctly. After the first combat phase is turned, there's an additional combat phase. At the beginning of that combat, you untap all creatures that attacked this turn. So Gamer would just untap himself and get another combat, which opens another attraction because he does that
Very
on
cool.
attack.
Dude.
And then also just Ferris Wheel is really silly as well. Ferris Wheel is able to phase out permanents. Choose target creature that hasn't been phased out with Ferris Wheel. That creature phases out until you roll a 3 or less while rolling to visit your attractions.
So nice.
So
Dude,
something
I just love
This is a cool deck.
something
love
just
this.
goes away for a turn. Yeah. The only problem with attractions is because you have to have your deck like shuffled and randomized off to the side. You know, you don't you can't guarantee what you open. So that's why the synergy of the deck is trying to get as many as fast as possible,
Yeah.
right?
Who cares which one you open at a time if you just open all of them?
This
it's-
is Roller Coaster Tycoon, the deck.
It is.
Well, since it's already over on me, can I talk about what some of the upgrades of this would be?
I was going to say, just for the sake of time, since we're already about an hour runtime.
All right, blaze through some upgrades real quick.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, give me like the one card that you wish you could play in this. We can do upgrade guides on Discord.
For me specifically, either of the two Ozoliths need to be in this deck.
Oh my god, yes.
Almost 100%. With the amount of time that Dangerous Gamer would be dying in combat or doing any of the fight kind of things of people trying to fight with him, and then like those effects that I had mentioned about like targeting it with the if it dies returns to play, because that sometimes happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Either of the two Ozoliths work fantastic. The original that would store his counters, and the new mono green one from March of the Machine that acts as a hardened scales.
Yep. Nice. Jared, one card you wish you could play.
The Great Henge.
Oh, you're right.
That would just make this deck.
That needs no explanation.
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you mean the party tree from The Hobbit?
Wait, what? What?
Did you not see that?
They're reskinning it for the Universes Beyond as the party tree from the Shire.
Maybe that'll.
But reprint. That's nice
because it's so expensive right now.
That's amazing.
It's like almost 60. It's a $60 card basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I have a bunch of Hydras and Nyx Bloom Ancient would be cool, but if I had to name one, Great Henge.
Yeah. It's Vesuvan Diplomacy for me, which is it is a budget upgrade. It's like a $4 or $5 card, but it's a 3 and a blue for an enchantment. It says whenever you cast a spell that targets only a single artifact or creature you control, create a token that's a copy of that artifact or creature, except it's not legendary.
Sorry, repeat the name of this card.
Vesuvan, Vesuvan.
Is this a blue card?
Yeah.
Crap. I was like, no wonder I didn't see this.
No, I know. Yeah. But it's such an easy upgrade to just like start making it does Aeronus's Vile Duplication, which is also another good one. I would go heavy into the I'm going to target a creature and make a token copy of it. Croaking Counterpart is already in the deck, which makes a 1/1 frog copy of a creature. But there's other effects like Aeronus's Vile Duplication and things like that target it, make a copy. Sea Double. There's the one that has Kicker for 5 that I can't remember if John, if you remember it.
Rite of Duplication.
Rite of Duplication. You could go super heavy in that direction and just make like 15 copies of Ivy that all get copied, like get targeted by a copy of something. Like it snowballs out of control. So the $25 version of it, I feel like is very tame because it's basically just a mutate theme deck. But if you start upgrading it, you can head in that direction. But
it was so funny when I was putting together my like maybes or like things to upgrade the deck. I was like, I accidentally added them to my sideboard, and all of a sudden my deck cost like $300. Like, what?
Yes.
What did I do? And then I meant to put them on the considering tab in Moxfield, and I was like, oh duh. I was like, wow, I accidentally. It sees the sideboard as part of the deck, of course.
Oh,
and
right.
That Great Henge is literally double the cost of the entire deck.
Yes.
So, like,
you could build 2 of the $25 budget decks for the cost of the Great Henge.
Yeah.
Well, guys, this has been fun. I'm excited to play these decks against each other and get that video going.
Yes.
But
we'll have that very soon.
It's been a fun little deck building challenge to try to make something work for $25. I think it's definitely possible. I think the biggest thing that I run into is you probably have to be playing these against other people who are doing the $25 budget, so you don't just get steamrolled by somebody who's playing Soul Ring. Like, so there's definitely some restrictions, but
I played tested mine against an online group that was playing precons, and it held very, very well. And
this is kind of make your own precon.
Yeah, and that was honestly even something because precons nowadays are actually double the cost of what we did here, right?
Yeah, they're $40 and usually have about $100 worth of card value.
47 precons now are $47.
Golly.
What if that's our next version of this? Is we build our own precon where it's like we have a $50 budget, we just double it.
Love it.
Because that'd be really cool.
At that point, you're starting to approach just building a deck,
right?
Like, I realize how even on man, my Ivy deck is sitting at $24.99 on Moxfield. So like we've nailed it. But like, man, give me
Mine
another
is
$25 and I think the deck would be
$25.09.
like, yes, it would be done. Oh, one of the things we were talking about back and forth on the Discord is that we're just counting basic lands as free. So like it adds about $1 on Moxfield. So you can call it like $26 budgets to include. But like you should be able to just go to your LGS and get basic lands for free. And
I just have them.
Find an LGS and they will almost assuredly give you basic lands for free. So
I mean,
if you're paying for your basic lands, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
Is nobody else just sitting on 400 bulk lands like I am, or
am as well?
I've got to get rid of mine.
Hello, it's me, Basic Lands Anonymous.
I have somehow like I've trimmed the stupid box like twice, and I still have like over 200 copies of each type.
That's crazy.
And that's not counting special versions.
Oh, I just have started sorting out my special basic lands to start. Like, why am I playing regular basic lands when I could be playing full art foil black and white lands from? It's so cool. Anyway, we could go on for another little while about this, but let's go ahead and wrap it up so we can go ahead and pay the old tea. Guys, thanks for watching. If you've stuck around this long, we really appreciate you. If you want a free way to support us and to support the channel, give us a like, a comment, and subscribe. You can share this. Also, jump into our Discord. We want to hang out. We want to chat. We want to see your deck list. We want to see your $25 budgets. What did we miss? What should we be playing in these decks? Let us know in the comments, in Discord. This is the Thoughtcast signing off. We'll see you in a couple weeks.